everyone. Welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting, another episode of the Indie Show. Sorry, we're running a little late. I was trying to get customer support on something that I called literally like over an hour ago. And of course, I just got done, and it's still not fixed. But we're here, and I got my man Unruly here. So we're going to be talking Volume 2, Fear No Malice of Rachel Rising. What's going on, Unruly?
Long day. I hate Tennessee. I hate Tennessee. I hate Tennessee.
Okay. But how do you feel about Tennessee? So, understandable. So, I think we can all, deal with that. So, curious, on the reread, what were your thoughts of this volume?
Well, we get to find out more of what's really going on.
Do we?
well, we get to find out Lilith's version of what's going on.
Okay, yeah.
And we do discover more about Zoe, who I adore.
Which we'll get to, but yeah, because some of that doesn't make sense to me, but sure, okay.
Well, see, obviously I've read this and the stuff that involves her down the line. So
well, yeah, you've read the rest of it, so for sure. All right. For me,
I'll tell you what, I was poring over here for the last half hour is just his incredible, delicate line work.
Oh, yeah, the artwork.
And his facial expressions are just, you don't get great facial. So there's like a handful of guys that can pull it off, and he's one of them.
Yeah. So my impression really is going on my report card. They, sorry, GTT. So, blame the customer service folks, but who still didn't even fix my problem. So my impression of this volume, this appears to be headed in a direction I was not initially anticipating, particularly the Zoe part. And I mean, are we just gonna kill Jed at the end of every volume? or what?
Well, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's not over yet.
Well, I'm sure it's not. I completely believe that. Given what she's already survived, I don't actually but yeah, and this definitely has me more intrigued, I think, than the first volume does. But I'm still super confused, and I don't believe a word that comes out of Lilith or Malice's mouth at this point. Well, it's because she's not even consistent in the story that she tells Rachel in this volume. So, yeah. But definitely more hooked at the moment, although really don't know where this is going at all. And from that standpoint, I think it's pretty good. So let's just kind of dig into it. At the beginning, we get the aftermath of the accident. You already went back outside. I'll do it when Unruly's talking in a second. And Rachel going to see
her aunt.
Her aunt, who I'm just blanked on the name, even though I just looked at it a little while ago. Johnny, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Her Aunt Johnny. And they talk about the fact that Jet is dead, and we get visited by a detective. So apparently somebody is actually paying attention to all this crap, maybe. Which we didn't really get in the first volume. Then it's like, where are the police and all of this? But so we get a little bit of that, and we get to reveal that Earl, right? It is Earl. I'm get my names confused here. Discovers that nope, we got another one who's walking dead here as Jet comes back. Earl in the morgue, and Jet comes back, even though her neck is clearly in pieces, and she's got like a huge notch out of her side. And if you had any wondering about were their bodies alive or not, clearly they're not. So what did you think about this reveal when we got a second person going through what Rachel was going through?
Beyond the obvious that they're connected, it's a small town. From what we find out later, some of these people are apparently reincarnations of entities or people from far earlier.
Right.
But yeah, the first time I read it, it freaked me out. I was like you. I'm like, all right, what the hell is going on? How many hot dead chicks can come back to life in one little town?
Right, because every woman we've seen die so far has come back. Whether it was the lady in the black dress in the club, Rachel, now Jet. Like, yeah, if you pass away in this town,
and you're hot and female.
And we see later in this volume, Zoe's sister, whoever that was, comes back. Yeah, so
I love how weird Earl looks. He looks like if a human and a toad were capable of reproducing.
A little bit. He reminds me of gosh dang, I had it yesterday. Another character. But yeah, I mean, he's just kind of he's easily, in many ways, like the simplest design that Terry, like for facial, and like he's just kind of this big block of a guy. And, and even like when he's actually getting him to express like some emotion, it's like, his expression is he's looking down. Like, you don't really see it, but he's using like his eyebrows and stuff to like show his emotion as he's, getting ready to embalm Jet, who wakes up and she's like, do I look awful? She's just like worried about.
He's kind of Shrekish now that I look
at it. A little bit, yeah. A little bit of a Shrek thing going on. And so we get that. We get Rachel with talking to her aunt after she talks to the cop here. And basically, that we find out that Aunt Johnny's gay, which is not even slightly stunning. And she's like, you want me to tell Carol? She's like, I didn't tell you about her. So, but then we get to the weird stuff at the end of this chapter, which is Zoe, like, walking by the graveyard.
And those next 2 pages are freaking great.
Oh, they're amazing panels, but like at this point I'm like, what the heck is happening in the story? Because I feel like some of this, like, I have faith he's going to tie it back together, but some of this just feels a little bit random at points. Like, why are suddenly everything exploding out of the grave? And yeah, I mean, what did you think when you saw that? When it's just like, it's like pow, 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 pow. Like there's explosions launching dead bodies out of their graves.
And then they all land perfectly.
Yeah. Perfectly in a star. And you can't really blame Zoe for running away again. Poor kid. But the whole thing is just beyond weird.
Which is precisely why I love
it. Yeah, well, that makes complete sense. And then we get back to
weird old Doc Seaman.
Maybe the weirdest character in the whole freaking book, which is saying something. Like, who we see, not just does he have her in, like, his dead wife in the house still, like, he moves her around and has breakfast with her. She's not just in, like, one spot. He, like, moves her during the day.
I think he was one of those dudes that was probably eccentric a little, as a youth. And then 22 plus decades of living with your dead wife has sent him totally around the bend.
Well, he had to be totally around the bend to start down this path.
Yeah, once you bring your dead wife's body home, I reckon you are certifiable.
Yeah. But basically, we get this as just a reveal that Rachel goes to him to get help with Jet. He's like, she's alive? And she's like, no. She's asking. That clearly things are wrong. Meanwhile, we go back to our girl Lilith here, wandering back to this creek bed, and we have wolves dig up another body. Well, they get rid of the guy that was there. She's like, he can't be in this grave. And then, yeah, like this whole thing is just. First we had the snake, now we have wolves. It's like, what is happening here? And then we get a super macabre, like, yet really funny sequence of them basically trying to figure out how to put Jet back together so she can function. Like, because she's alive, but her neck is broken completely, so she can't even hold her head up.
They're Humpty Dumpty in her.
Yeah, they're trying to put her back together, and I don't know why, but it just makes me laugh. Like this whole conversation is just ridiculous and funny, and she's like, she'll apologize, and just like, no, and so Rachel just lets go of her neck, so it just like falls over. She's like, okay.
Jet
like,
is a character. She is definitely the comic relief.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And then she's like, sorry, Doc, for calling you a perv. He's like, oh, I guess I didn't hear that. She's like, oh, good, I didn't say that part out loud. Like, just.
We've all done that.
Oh, I know. Absolutely. And so what did you think of that? What did you think of that sequence with just them, like, his humor, or, I think his humor is maybe not something I necessarily expected in this story.
Well, I want to go back to the wolves, because the wolves aren't exactly enthusiastic about doing this.
No.
And when one of them drags the guy away, it's gnawing on him.
Right.
And we'll get to see him later in this same little arc.
Oh, really? Okay, so
the half-dead guy.
Yeah.
But that whole sequence, that's obviously comic relief.
Yeah.
Moore's a great storyteller. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, he is. And then we go back to the weird lady in the black dress with the snake, which is just like, she just keeps vomiting the snake up and swallowing it. It's just kind of gross. I'm not going to lie.
A vicious ass snake.
Yeah. Well, it's a copperhead, as we find out later. Supposedly.
Well, if it's a copperhead, it's the biggest. It's like 10 times bigger than any copperhead I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, it's a big one. Yeah, I've seen big ones, but yeah, that's definitely a giant one. But I assume, based on the story we get later, but who knows if you can even believe that story. But
it's just it's demonic at this point. So anything goes, I guess.
For sure. So we go back to Jet and Rachel and Earl, and so we got Earl earlier when he thought Jet was dead, sort of confessing his feelings, and we get this like, are you gay? Where she asks, are you gay? So wow, a perfect gentleman. Who knew? But that, like, she can actually feel like his touch and nobody else's, as they're kind of waiting until they can put her back together. I assume there's going to be more to this relationship as we go forward, for sure. So, but yeah, Jet is clearly the comic relief, and I am here for it through all of it, even though they keep like knocking her off like every chance they get. And the cat is back. But then we get this great 2-page panel of a body under a tree and Zoe in the tree, in the snow, to end this chapter. Oh, the gravy cat.
Zoe way up high in the tree, and obviously that body, even though it's not decomposed, roots have grown over it.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure what's going on with that.
Me neither, because that's not one we've seen yet. So, I mean, and the fact that you say you're not sure what's going on with that makes me wonder if we ever find out what's going on with that.
And meanwhile, we got Rachel cruising around in that badass 55 Vet.
Oh, yeah, just, nothing wrong with that car.
Whose back license plate, if you haven't noticed, is Morgue.
Yes. Yeah, because it's Johnny's vet. Yes, I did notice that. And she goes back to visit Lewis, who we saw in the first one, who just sits out in the cold in his undies.
Well, I guess you people that are used to the cold or live in the snow, you really must get used to it, because Earl walks around in short sleeves and shirts.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody seems underdressed to me. If it gets in the 30s, I'm dressed up like freaking Admiral Perry going to the North Pole.
I am definitely on the line. Yeah, you definitely get used to it. Like people that live truly north, you totally do get used to it compared to, within reason, compared to people that are not used to it. But because I know what you would put a coat on for, I would have a sweatshirt or a light jacket on, and so on and so forth. But people that live north of me probably think I'm a wimp. So that's just the way it works. But basically we get, that he is very much aware of, you just wanted in.
Yeah, even though he apparently only sits on his porch all day, he knows what's going on.
He knows everything that's going on, or appears to. That, yeah. And he talks about the fact that since Lilith rolled into town, we get no. We've had the birds have been quiet, which is not good. But then we see Lilith is basically following a path of dead things to this house out in the middle of nowhere, where we find Zoe has killed more people, or more people are dead. And we get our first kind of real reveal here we get this conversation with her, which, again, I don't fully believe, because she says she's because we saw in the first episode, or the first volume, her supposed sister, and then...
But that was a foster family.
Oh, what? The first one was?
The first one was a foster family.
Oh, I didn't register that. I didn't catch that. I guess I missed that description that was a foster family to start with. Because I was super confused, because I thought the lady said her parents burned up in the fire and her sister burned up or whatever. I didn't realize that they were all a foster family. I guess I missed that. Okay. That makes more sense than this whole description of that Zoe's actually super old.
Well, I can tell you this, that is accurate. She is that old.
Okay. Interesting. So, yeah, that she was born in 55, so she's been 10 years old for 47 years.
She's older than Sputnik.
Yeah. So basically Lilith convinces her that there's a demon inside of her and wants to talk to her, and we get what prompted my song for my Instagram post today. It seemed appropriate, as we get to meet Malus. And we get to see Lilith go from her modern to her old witchy clothes, but yeah, Zoe turns into this Malus creature who is Yeah, she says his name means evil, that he was before evil, and clearly comes off as that. But we see. So, what do you think of this conversation and her goals and his goals and like what? I'm very confused about what she's trying to actually accomplish here.
This dialogue is perfection.
Yeah.
Lilith, last time I saw you, you were backed up to a goat.
Well, yeah, he's pure, clearly like pure evil and completely untrustworthy. Whatever deal she's made with this thing, and it's clear that he's just using it to his own ends. It's like, well, yeah, you wanted this, but I'm going to do this to do what I want, which is like destroy all of humanity. And I don't know. It's just the whole thing is like, clearly he's double crossed her at this point, and yet she sort of doesn't really seem to care. Yet she's trying to like keep him reined in until he does what she wants.
300 years, the Roman Empire fell fast.
Yeah. And I feel like these are two, I mean, obviously they're both very completely untrustworthy. Like,
well, now,
go ahead.
If she really is Lilith, all right, now, and follow along. Malus says it took God 28 generations to make an avatar, Jesus.
Right.
So apparently, in this universe, all that is true. The begats at the beginning of the New Testament.
Right. Based on what Malus is saying, yes.
Based on what Malus is saying, Lilith was the first woman. She was before Eve. So
right.
this incarnation of her in Manson 300 years ago, she was 5,000 or 6,000 years old at that point.
Right.
So I don't know what's going on with her and this lust for revenge. Surely in her 6,000 years, she's been through that more than once.
Right. And it feels like it's just very petty. Like, sort of beneath. If she is what she says, like, who cares? Like, okay. I mean, she makes a comment later about, which is talking to Rachel about, but yeah, it's, she's like, we had a deal, you and I. I love how he's just like, love the cleavage. Like, he just,
in this sequence, I really enjoyed Malus.
Right.
In his demon form, and with this dialogue, I enjoyed the character. This is the last time I will enjoy Malus for the rest of the book. Because when he's trapped in a human, he's a dick.
Well, yeah, we see that later. So we go through this, and then suddenly, like, Malus just goes quiet on her, and then and turns back into Zoe, and we see that Zoe has attempted, in listening, she had the knife the whole time, and she's attempted to kill herself and kill Malus, although, like, what she doesn't understand is that just lets him escape, but she's like, what have you done? And she's like, finally killed the right person. And we see Lilith run to try to take her to the hospital because she doesn't want Malus escaping from Zoe. But that's sort of too late, as we're going to find out. Meanwhile, we get Jet, and this is interesting because Rachel was talking about that she didn't really heal from things that had happened to her, and yet, sort of once they get Jet's neck realigned, it appears like she starts to heal.
She gets a little color back in her cheeks.
Yeah, I mean, and she's hungry and like, whoa, and seems like she can feel again, and like that the spine starts working, that we get some relief. And then of course we see, like, she goes with Rachel to the hospital to see Johnny, and she's just like, Oh, it's like, I don't understand. Oh, like, but I love the sequence when they're like, well, we got to find this little girl. It's our only hope, and blah, blah, blah. And then she just goes wheeling by. It's just like their faces in the elevator. Let me get it in, like, make myself big here. Get it to focus. Like, yeah, like when the realization of who that was that just went by, it's super well done for sure. So what do you think about all the, like, I'm not even sure what to talk about in some of this, because there's a lot going on, but in some of these sequences that I'm sure is important, but it just kind of keeps moving in a way that, like, but we see, like, Rachel touches her and sort of gets burned and, like, moves away. But when Jet touches her, nothing seems to happen. Only we see that something did happen, like after Rachel leaves. As Malice is now in Jet, which I was not happy about at all.
Me neither.
So what did you think of that? So what do you think of what's going on there? You obviously know, but like, why Rachel couldn't really touch her, but so he couldn't infect Rachel, but he could infect Jet.
They're different players in the story.
Yeah.
But and what I have to believe is when Rachel touched her, she got all of Zoe's backstory, and all the people that Malice has made her kill over 5+ decades.
Oh, I didn't think that. I just thought it gave her, she got enough because she's like, I know where I have to go. So she goes to, like, I guess she did get backstory in terms of a little bit, but she knows where to go look for Lilith now. But yeah, I hadn't really thought about that.
All right, and when Malice is in the tree, right when Jet cuts her wrist or whatever it is she does,
yeah,
Malice is saying, the hatred here, that I can use, this is fertile soil, already my garden grows. And when harvest comes, we will both be free of the curse. And Lilith turns around and says, tell me who carries your seed so I can protect them.
right.
And Malice is out of it. That's important later.
Yeah, because like somebody is, yeah, there's somebody that he's trying to get another generation, because we get that later when he talks to Zoe from Jet's form, is like who the guy is, who that person is. And then so Rachel goes, and then we see Zoe's sister is now risen, also, who was also buried in the creek, is now risen with the plaque, and she's got one of the wolves, but just one. So I don't know what happened to the other wolf. But in the meantime, Lilith and Rachel finally have a conversation, and Lilith, I feel like, lies through everything. Like, there's probably truth, but all of it's twisted and, like, in ways that none of it's trustworthy.
What does Malice tell Zoe? Of course she lies. She's a witch. Her mouth is an open grave.
Yeah.
Which I gotta believe that Malice would be an authority on lying.
Absolutely. And because what I find interesting, though, is right off the bat, she talks about that there were just 4 of them. And yet we now have 5 that have risen. Because Lilith is one, she herself. And then you got Rachel, the snake lady, the wolf lady. So there's your 4. So what is Jet?
Well, no, wait, back up. I don't think you count Lilith. I think Lilith never went anywhere. She's been alive the whole time.
My point is, like, and again, you can't trust Lilith's story, but her story is, the worst of it is, there was just 4 of us. So Lilith plus 3 others.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So
Well,
clearly, that part of Lilith's story is bupkis because there's clearly a fifth one. And I mean, and then obviously all the details about what the townspeople did to him is all conflicted and back and forth. And this is where she talks about this. They stuffed a copperhead down her throat, which is where, the snake lady, and then fed one of them to wolves, which is the Mary Scott, which was the wolf. And she's like, that's right. You were 28 when they hung you, which is why, of course, Rachel's supposedly got the thing around her neck. But yeah, I love how she just keeps, they hung him, they burned him, they couldn't do it. And, this whole story is clearly confusing, like not really contradictory, but somewhat. And then, but we get to the end, and it's basically she's going to try to bring judgment. The whole point of this, and apparently she sort of brought forth malice, is to bring judgment on Manson. And she's like, why do you think I resurrected you three? But I don't necessarily believe she did. Like, the whole thing is just completely untrustworthy, right?
But my favorite part of the whole encounter is towards the end. At dusk, they set the bodies on fire to send us back to hell, but the four of us would not burn. When I told them real witches cannot burn, and they had just barbecued their own daughters, oh, the drama.
Yeah, where was that at? Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is just... But she says they tried to drown him and they burned him, and like she just goes back and forth.
Yeah, both. A heavy rain kept the bodies from burning to the bone. She's always got an explanation.
Yeah, for her inconsistency.
Cholera, diphtheria, what does it matter?
Yeah. Yeah, I forget because it keeps going on in the next. I was like, wait, where's the end? Yeah, so it goes on into the next issue. Like, this conversation goes on for a while, but Rachel's clearly like catching her inconsistencies, and like, so we get. But at the end of this conversation, I'm not sure exactly what Lilith does to her. Like, she like wraps her up and puts her back below the ground, but then Lilith changes again. So now she has dark hair? So is she just doing that to disguise herself when Rachel comes back? Like, she's just bought herself some time? Or what the... Like, I'm not sure exactly what's going on here. And A-OK from Unruly. Nice. Unruly is known for his amazing A-OKs. So, and hey, aggressively. Yeah, so we get a different version of Lilith here at the end, and basically that, yeah, she is undeterred that she's going to destroy this town. Meanwhile, we go back to Malice/Jet looking over Zoe, and the social worker lady comes, and yeah, that doesn't take very long.
Man, that poor social lady worker cannot catch a break.
Well, she's done now. I mean, like, guess didn't technically kill her, but put her in a zombified her, basically.
And here's some more beautiful dialogue from Malice. Obviously childless, by the way, living with cats in a freezer full of ice cream. And oh my God, is that polyester?
her reaction to that is just like, how does Malice even know what polyester is? I mean, obviously he's been living inside of a little girl or whatever, but it's still like, what? So we jump ahead. Then from there we jump to the cop, who's realizing that, yeah, shit may be like worse than he thinks. Like, oh, random murders. Oh wait, son of a like that's not good.
But you know what? That's mildly disappointing to me because that's a convention I've seen in at least 3 or 4 horror movies. You know?
Oh, I've seen that in horror movies and in TV shows, and like they use that crap all the time.
Any 5 points that aren't, you can draw a pentagram amongst. And it would never occur to me to look at them on a map and go, oh my God, look, a triangle.
Right. I mean, it's like, well, they do that stuff, and then it's like, you see that all the time. You see it in comics and everything else, and it's always like, oh, the killer's giving away the pattern. It's like,
all right, now
doing that.
Turn the page where Rachel's underground.
Yeah, all the dead bodies.
On that full page spread, you notice she's not only is she about 15 feet up, 20 feet underground, she's upside down.
Yeah.
And in the bottom left corner is where the wolf buried what was left of that poor dude.
Oh, I do see that. I didn't notice the dude, but yeah. Then he got reburied. I did not notice that before.
Very shallowly.
Yeah. Not deep enough. So, all right. So, yeah, she's buried upside down again. So, Rachel's going to have to dig herself out again. Meanwhile, we get one of the best conversations. There's several really good conversations in this volume. I mean, obviously, Malus and Lilith and Rachel. But this Zoe and Malus conversation is freaking fantastic. If like, how did you do? Like, him trying to figure out why she's still alive, and like trying to get information on Lilith, and Zoe not really know what's going on. And I love the whole thing. It's like, oh, you're gonna father my 6th generation or whatever, and it's like, I'm not asking permission, and then she just like starts. I love how he's like, you're gonna destroy the world and blah 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 and protect him, and she just starts laughing. I'm not doing that. I just love Zoe's reaction. I'm like, I ain't doing that. Screw you. Like,
you laugh at me?
Yeah. You filthy pig, you're dead without me. Do you understand that? It's like, oh, bite me. It's like the look on her face, which is like, yeah, whatever. I'm not afraid of you anymore. Like,
but even Malus can appreciate her,
Oh, he does. He's just like, oh, you're perfect. And truly tries to manipulate her into like, this didn't actually happen. And wanders off to find him a new body. So basically, like, does he just knock the priest out, or does he actually kill the priest before he does?
I think the priest is just knocked out. I think
yeah.
He's probably got to transfer into a living host.
I gotcha. And he doesn't understand what's going on with Zoe, because that was what he was probably like, this is different because she's sort of alive. Or not Zoe, but Jet.
Well,
but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he comes to he finds himself in this Jet's caught between worlds somehow.
Right.
Which is why I got to believe he switched bodies so quickly.
Well, I also think he doesn't want anybody to, even though he put Zoe back to sleep and told her to dream, he doesn't want to risk any chance of her being able to know it's him. Right. So he's clearly trying to like bury the trail for Lilith, so Lilith can't find him. So yeah, he shocks Zoe and Jet, and apparently re-kills Jet. And we see Earl's with the visit Johnny, and we end with like Earl. To start with, we go Earl basically getting ready to clean up and bomb Jet again. I'm like, how many times are we going to do this? Meanwhile, we also end with Rachel digging herself out of a grave again. Like, But it also seems that she now knows more. Not just what I feel like she knows more than even what Lilith told her through whatever happened there. But yeah, so that is how the volume ends. What are your thoughts on this volume? Like overall?
Love it. It's just doing this.
Right.
I mean, I fell in love with it the first time I've read it. This is like will be the fourth or fifth time I've reread it. That I want to turn people onto it. That's why I sent you the trades. I want more. He's got a Kickstarter out right now. It's 120 pages of just sketch drawings of his various characters.
Yeah.
And it's been going for about a week. He's over 150K.
Nice.
And, once a year, he winds up raising 50, 60, 70 grand for charity selling his art.
Yeah.
So he's carved his own nice little niche in the comic industry, and I'm here for it.
Yeah. So for me on this volume, this one definitely, in some ways, we got a lot of information here, and yet I'm probably more confused now than I was like at the end of volume 1. I'm definitely more intrigued to see where it goes because we got a lot of hooks here that like in terms of what actually is happening with Lilith, with Zoe, with Malus, with Rachel and Jed, and these other two witches that have risen back, Mary and I forget what the other one's name is, but so there's definitely a lot going on here. There's a lot of intrigue. The conversations, though, are probably what's like his art is really good. The story is intriguing, but the conversations are what really drives this.
Like, and there was an interesting little exchange between Rachel and Lewis at the very end when she goes to see him sitting on the porch. And he says, "My wife thinks you're cursed." And she goes, "Do you think I'm cursed?" And he looks at her and says, "Well, you don't look blessed."
Yeah.
That's like 12 lines total between the two of them, and it's just perfect.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not just the big conversations. It's not just the Lilith and Malus and Lilith and Rachel and Malus and Zoe. All those conversations are great, but we went back to and we talked about the whole conversation between Earl and the doctor, Jed and Rachel, like, which is just kind of a funny, weird conversation, and the Lewis and Rachel conversation, and even the conversation that doesn't necessarily move the plot, but the conversation between Aunt Johnny and Rachel when Rachel's like, "No, I know about Carol, even though you haven't told me." Like, it's just such a really well done conversation. Like, and all of these characters have a unique voice. His writing is just really, really good. And I mean, it's really what more than the story or any of that or any of the like weird witches and the demon and all this stuff that's going on. It's the conversations that have me more hooked now than I was after volume 1, because there's just so many really good conversations in this story that are like, there's not a ton there's action, but not really. It's just being driven by these conversations, and and I mean, even the conversation that's one page before Earl finds out that Jet's dead again, like, and he's talking to Johnny. He's like, "What do you mean you lost them? Well, maybe they're busy. What, did you expect them to stay in touch with you?" He's like, I think Jet needs me. And Johnny's just like, "Oh, Earl," just like, that. And then, of course, it turns out that she's dead again, at least momentarily. And she does need him, but it's just, it's just all really, really well done. And yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to more. More. Go ahead.
You said it perfectly. Each character does have their own unique voice, and that's a rare thing in my experience for somebody to pull off.
Yeah.
Especially if you grew up reading comics in the Bronze Age. there was a wise ass usually, and then everyone else just all they talked was to move the story along.
Right.
You didn't really have unique voices like this.
No, you definitely don't. I mean, and it's Earl is a very real. I mean, the characters feel for the most part real. They feel like they have agency in what's going on.
Well, that's the whole trick. If you make your characters believable, if the reader sees them as real, you can do anything and you're automatically along for that ride.
I mean, all the other crazy stuff to this point makes no sense at all. I mean, we got Lilith's story, but Lilith's story does not pass the BS test. Like, there's clearly more going on here. Why on earth, as powerful as she appears to be, why on earth does she need Malus for this? Like, and so clearly there's more here than what she was telling Rachel at this point. And so, like none of this appears to pass. Like, if she wanted to wipe these people out, she could. Like, and so why would she even risk dealing with a creature like Malus?
I've got a theory because, and I'm not saying that this is right or that you find it out later. She's 6,000 years old. She bores easily.
Well,
she's got powers. She knows that about this demon. Why not hunt him down and add that little extra bit of spiciness to her revenge?
Could be.
Just because she can.
If she's actually Lilith, like, But all right, well, we will wrap there. We'll keep this under our hour since we're just the two of us talking one volume. Any final thoughts on this volume you want to express before we move on? Before we close her down tonight?
I'm ready for the next one.
All right, me too. I am looking forward to it. I'm glad you sent this to me. This volume definitely has me way more ready than I was after the first one. Not that the first one was bad. I was just like, I don't know where this is going, and I don't. Yeah, but it really was driven by the conversations and not necessarily the plot points, the weird demon and revenge and which story. Like, it wasn't necessarily that. It was just the way the conversations for me really hooked me into the rest of this. So
it only gets weirder.
I have the feeling, yes. So I want to thank Aggressively and GT Key and whoever else is hanging out with us. It looks like there's a few more people at least supposedly watching, even if they're not in chat. Thank you all for hanging out with us tonight. And we will catch you next time. Later, everybody.